Thanks for staying with us. I'm Sarah McIntyre, filling in for Jerry Agar, who I said is on the morning duty here at Straight Talk. Well, of course, there's been a lot of talk about the mental illness of these so-called lone wolf attacks. Well, there's also a look at what is the psychology behind the terrorist group ISIS. How are they branding themselves to attract such young men to come, leave their countries in Canada like John McGuire, fly overseas and take up the cause? Well, in fact, Special Operatives Major General Michael Nagatas actually formed a task force looking exactly at the psychology of ISIS. And joining me to talk about the latest is JJ McCullough, Sun News contributor out of Vancouver. JJ, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
So what did you make? Were you surprised to see that a special operatives assembling a team to look at the psychology of a terrorist cell?
No, I mean, it seems like a perfectly justifiable move as far as, sort of strategic efforts go. I mean, they always say that you have to know your enemy, and I think that there's frankly been a lot of speculation that hasn't really gone anywhere over the years since 9/11 about what terrorists, what Islamic radical fundamentalist terrorists are really all about. And I mean, like, there's been all of these sort of pet theories that you often read in the press. Are they motivated by politics? Are they motivated by religion? Are they motivated by economics? And there seems to be some kernel of truth in many of these arguments, but there seems to also be a lot of evidence that disproves a lot of these arguments as well. I mean, we know, for instance, that the fact that President Obama pulled all of the American troops out of Iraq didn't really seem to do much in terms of quelling terrorism. So that sort of seems to sort of somewhat undermine the idea that it's all about foreign policy. And we know that as we've looked into the background of a number of these terrorists, that a number of them come from quite well-off, middle class, or even wealthy families. So that sort of seems to dispute the idea that it's all about economics. So I think it is overdue to just have a comprehensive sort of consolidated report that tries to figure out once and for all, what are these people actually about? And is there any way that by studying them and by studying their psychology that we can actually have a very conceited sort of political approach to dealing with, to use the preferred term, the sort of root causes of this phenomenon?
Yeah, I mean, the root causes. I think there's a confluence of issues. I don't think that there's any one factor. There's no panacea magic bullet that we can point to and go, that's it. There's going to be a number of different answers to why people are attracted to terrorist groups like ISIS and how the group itself functions, which is part of what this Major General is focusing on. And he's quoted as saying, we have not defeated the idea. We don't even understand the idea. And I think that that's really important. He says one aspect of ISIS that they are focusing on is their ability and capacity to control, not just territory, but the people that are going to support them. There's been over 1,000 foreign nationals that have left to join up arms in this evil ideology. And how is it that they maintain such an adherent, a loyal, a dogmatic loyalty to this ideology? So I think he's onto something, but I'm not quite sure how that's going to help on the front lines against ISIS.
Yeah, well, I mean, that it sort of gets into the idea of, well, what is our strategy? Is our strategy to have a sort of military victory, which is, seems to be what we're engaged in right now in Iraq in terms of what America and what Canada and what sort of our coalition partners are doing in terms of trying to sort of decapitate them from a sort of military perspective, right? To sort of erode their ability to be a sort of military threat to the region. But then, of course, there's also this argument, and frankly, Prime Minister Harper, President Obama have said this as well, is that, military victory only goes so far, and ultimately there has to be a political victory, there has to be an ideological victory, which is to say there has to be some sort of psychological victory, and there has to be a way that we can kind of convert these people away from this very popular philosophy that seems to be taking root in large portions of the Middle East. So, if we take our leaders seriously, if we believe that this is an enemy that cannot be defeated strictly on the battlefield, then yeah, it does behoove us to sort of figure out if there is a sort of root cause phenomenon that we can help to extinguish. Although at the same time, what it reminds me a lot of is when we talk about crime, there's kind of an idea that crime is forever with us, that murder is forever with us, that rape is sort of forever with us, and that there isn't really a magical solution to these kinds of problems, that these are just sort of social ills that kind of exist since time immemorial, right? And so the idea that there is, as you said, a kind of magical one-size-fits-all solution, I think is quite naive. And I think that what this report is likely to reveal when it is released next month is that it is kind of a murky phenomenon that's sort of a confluence of a number of different factors, no one of which can be easily identified and sort of clinically extinguished.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the depressing conclusion, right? Is that there is no magic bullet. We aren't fighting the Cold War anymore, where there's known enemy lines, and that they're for this and we're for that, and they're the bad guys and we're the good guys, and we're going to fight the good fight and they're evil.
It's a good analogy, though. I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but I think that's quite a good analogy, because there was, in the sense of the Cold War, the idea was that what won the Cold War ultimately, and when you sort of study what dissidents in Eastern Europe had to say, was that they were ultimately persuaded that our Western values of capitalism and democracy were ultimately better at delivering the goods and actually created a better, healthier, happier lifestyle than Soviet communism did. But that doesn't seem to be the case. I mean, it doesn't seem to be the fact that we live a sort of much more free and open lifestyle doesn't seem to really convince a lot of these people. A lot of terrorists, I mean, Mohammed Atta, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, they spent time in the West. They were exposed to Western ideals, and they consciously rejected them to embrace a lifestyle that I would say, and I think most rational people would say, is significantly worse and based on significantly much more backwards and much more unfulfilling sort of social values. And yet our ability to champion our own righteousness doesn't seem to be changing any hearts and minds.
Yeah, the battle for the hearts and mind. Thank you so much, JJ, for coming in and talking about this. I suspect we'll be talking about it more, especially when this report is released. We're also